For decades, whispers had circulated through the small, windswept towns of central Washington. Tales of a hole in the hills so impossibly deep that no rope could find its end, a pit that swallowed anything cast into it and returned nothing, not even an echo. Locals spoke of strange happenings near the site, dead animals inexplicably brought back to life, bizarre radio interference, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. In 1997, Mel Waters, a soft-spoken man with an unremarkable past, broke the silence on the nationally syndicated paranormal radio program Coast to Coast AM, revealing that the bottomless pit lay on his property. He described lowering nearly 80,000 feet of weighted fishing line without ever hitting bottom, of dropping large items, refrigerators, metal scrap, even old appliances, only to have them vanish soundlessly into the abyss. His accounts grew darker. A neighbor's dog, buried in the hole after its death, seen days later roaming the hills alive and unchanged. Ice lowered inside that returned warm to the touch, blistering the skin like a burn. A black mist rising some mornings, curling upward as if pulled by invisible hands. Mel claimed that the area around the pit was unlike anywhere else. Compasses spun wildly, electronics failed without explanation, and an eerie metallic hum, sometimes pulsed from below, felt more in the bones than heard by the ears. But the strangest detail was how the air near the rim seemed unnaturally still, as if sound itself was being swallowed alongside everything else. Days after his radio interview, Mel said black SUVs and unmarked military trucks arrived at his property. The men who stepped out were polite, but their message was clear. This was now federal land, and he was to leave. Immediately, they offered him a generous sum of money in exchange for silence, along with a warning. For your own safety, Mr. Waters, forget this place ever existed. He left, but the story didn't end there. Months later, Mel contacted the radio show again, claiming he had been forcibly taken overseas, waking up in a hospital bed in Australia with no memory of how he got there. He carried with him only fragments of recollection, bright lights, a sensation of falling, and a low, endless roar in his ears. In the months that followed, Mel noticed he was being watched. Cars idled near his home late at night, headlights off. Strange clicks and bursts of static punctuated his phone calls. People he spoke to about the hole stopped returning his messages. He described seeing the same man, tall, expressionless, wearing a black overcoat, standing across the street on 3 separate occasions, always staring, never approaching. When he tried to return to his property, he found a road blocked by a tall chain-link fence topped with razor wire, and beyond it, armed guards in camouflage. The locals had grown quiet. Some claimed the pit had been sealed with concrete, while others whispered that it had only been covered, and something was still moving beneath it. Despite the danger, Mel began gathering accounts from those who claimed to have encountered the pit. An elderly woman recalled how her father once lowered a bucket of water inside, only to find it returned filled with a thick, tar-like liquid that corroded metal on contact. A retired hunter claimed that on a moonless night he saw a column of pale light shoot from the hole straight into the sky, and in its glow, shapes tall, thin, impossibly still, standing at the edge and peering upward. One man swore he saw a flock of birds vanish into the hole's mouth without flapping, as though sucked in by some silent current. And then, in his final radio appearance, Mel's voice broke when he said, "I think it's not just a hole, it's a door. And I don't think it opens into anything we can understand." Shortly after that, Mel vanished for good. No death certificate, no confirmed sightings, only rumors of a man seen wandering a dusty road in Nevada, muttering about the throat of the earth and things that climb up when it rains. Today, the hills of central Washington remain quiet, the wind carrying nothing but the rustle of pine. But some nights, those who live nearby say the silence breaks, replaced by a low, steady breathing that rises from the ground, like something vast and patient is waiting below. In the years after Mel's final broadcast, the story of the bottomless pit took on a life of its own. It became an obsession for late-night radio callers, conspiracy forums, and small-town storytellers. Amateur researchers arrived from across the country, armed with GPS units, drones, and the conviction that they could succeed where others had failed. Yet every lead ended the same way. Roads inexplicably closed, coordinates shifting without reason, and the unsettling presence of black helicopters hovering in the distance. Some seekers reported being stopped by men in plain clothes who asked polite but pointed questions, then advised them to go home before you lose more than your way. One such group, led by a paranormal investigator named Daniel Kramer, refused to turn back. Daniel had made a career out of debunking ghost stories, but something about Mel's hold defied his skepticism. In late autumn, he and his team of 4 set out into the windswept hills, their truck loaded with ground-penetrating radar, thermal cameras, and weeks' worth of supplies. They spent days interviewing reluctant locals, piecing together rumors until they believed they had narrowed the pit's location to a 5-mile radius. The warnings they received were unsettling. "If you find it, you won't come back the same," one rancher said, his eyes fixed on the floor. In the years after Mel's final broadcast, the story of the bottomless pit took on a life of its own. It became an obsession for late-night radio callers, conspiracy forums, and small-town storytellers. Amateur researchers arrived from across the country, armed with GPS units, drones, and the conviction that they could succeed where others had failed. Yet every lead ended the same way. Roads inexplicably closed, coordinates shifting without reason, and the unsettling presence of black helicopters hovering in the distance. Some seekers reported being stopped by men in plain clothes who asked polite but pointed questions, then advised them to go home before you lose more than your way. One such group, led by a paranormal investigator named Daniel Kramer, refused to turn back. Daniel had made a career out of debunking ghost stories, but something about Mel's hold defied his skepticism. In late autumn, he and his team of 4 set out into the windswept hills, their truck loaded with ground-penetrating radar, thermal cameras, and weeks' worth of supplies. They spent days interviewing reluctant locals, piecing together rumors until they believed they had narrowed the pit's location to a 5-mile radius. The warnings they received were unsettling. "If you find it, you won't come back the same," one rancher said, his eyes fixed on the floor. On the third night, camped near a ridge overlooking a barren stretch of earth, their seismograph registered a deep, rhythmic pulse, like the slow beat of a giant heart beneath the ground. Radios crackled with static, then picked up faint voices speaking in no language the team recognized. Compasses spun uselessly in their hands. As they moved toward the signal, the air grew unnaturally cold, and a dense fog rolled in, muffling their footsteps. That's when they heard it, faint at first, then unmistakable, the anguished wail of something alive, echoing up from the earth. The sound built to a piercing shriek, and then silence. The following morning, they found their gear coated in a slick, metallic-smelling residue that burned the skin on contact. Reviewing their footage, one cameraman froze a frame showing a figure at the tree line, a tall, thin silhouette with limbs too long for its body, watching them from a distance before vanishing between frames. Daniel insisted they continue. But as night fell, their GPS units began displaying impossible locations. The middle of the Pacific Ocean, the Arctic Circle, and then nothing. The last recovered audio from their expedition is a frantic mix of voices, the snap of breaking branches, and Daniel shouting, "It's not a hole, it's a throat," before a deafening roar drowns everything. When a search party arrived weeks later, they found the camp abandoned. Every piece of equipment had been placed neatly in a circle on scorched earth, as if arranged with precision. There was no sign of the team, no footprints leading away, no straged, just silence. The official report claimed they had gotten lost and perished in the elements, but locals still speak of seeing strange lights on the ridge at night and hearing slow, heavy breathing in the stillness, like the earth itself was alive and listening.